All right, guys, we're going to hang out, do an Unleashed video. And one of you was asking what the Unleashed videos are about. Well, they're about just doing whatever I want. Is I was doing Twitch streams, and the problem I have is allergies, apparently. And so I couldn't always stream when I'd want to or on a schedule or something like that. So this was kind of meant to replace it ultimately. But I could either work on things and talk about them as I'm working on them. It's not meant to be like a project video where those are supposed to be more like time lapses or talking about things that I'm actually working on, which I've completely neglected along with the games section, playing games, that is. I thought about putting those in the Unleashed section as well, and it just didn't fit. So we have a lot of games to kind of go through that are in my collection, which I need to get to at some point, but yeah, it'll be a little while until all that happens, until I'm feeling it, I guess. So, um, yeah, and that's kind of the idea of the Unleashed video. So I wanted to start here doing kind of like the old environment art techniques that I did in the previous video. Some people are saying like none of this stuff is used in modern game development, and to some degree, a lot of the like blocking out of an environment maybe not used, but like not like this type of building of an environment, but it also is. It's kind of a weird situation right now with the way procedural systems work and the way studios have been working. There's definitely like in-house tools as well that a lot of studios use that are completely different than like this setup here. The one studio I was working at, for example, there was no Maya Max Blender 3D Studio. It was just straight up custom software. And that kind of tool, I imagine, can be utilized in other studios if they have that type of setup. Can't really go into too much depth on it and how it worked, but you do sign non-disclosure agreements for things, and so, but pretty sure it could be utilized on certain titles, not necessarily um, everything though, because a lot of times tools like they're made for a purpose, task and purpose. It's not just one size fits all. So like when someone starts saying like there's an industry standard, and generally I find that it's usually they're, at least what I'm talking about, maybe others as well. They're talking about the most common things used in the industry, not necessarily specialization software and whatnot. Like I know Halo Infinite has a custom setup where they've put up some monstrosity between like Substance Designer, Houdini, and all kinds of other stuff, but I couldn't tell you how it works, right? Exactly. So I'm not gonna like say that's an industry standard workflow right now. If there's like publicly available tools that do something similar, then sure. But I haven't seen them. So now, of course, there are like really cool UV mapping tools. There are level design tools that you simply don't have in Blender or Unity or Unreal Engine by default, but they come as like plugins or add-ons for the software, usually on the stores, right? Definitely useful in helping create environments and whatnot. And there's a lot of tools you can use to help create environments. It's not like one size fits all at all. And it depends on each prop or each little section of the environment and what you're going to utilize. Like if you're going to use Google Maps to help create your environment, that's part of the process now, right? It's part of your workflow. So it's not like you just, went in and hand modeled everything from imagination or something. Um, it's become part of the tool set or the workflow, if you would, or pipeline, if you want to think of it like that. Let's do cavity down real quick. So what we're doing in this one, down, no, up. What we're doing in this one, I just wanted to start some kind of terrain. It's just like a shelf right now. Nothing too crazy here. And let's do the idea of a building up here. All right, very quick to make something like that, right? The old school kind of technique, I guess, if you would. And we could shape this out a little bit more, perhaps, if we wanted to have like a roof or something. But we need to know the size and the dimensions of things. So we create a cube. We make it 2 by 2 or 1 by 1 by 2. That's the rough size of a human. So we can know if we're in proportion here, to some degree at least. All right. And we can kind of shift things around as needed. Now, games do have restrictions on things that you can create at what sizes because of the way the animation systems oftentimes work. But each game could be kind of a little bit unique or original in that setup. So like, really going to be, let me apply that, control it. So what you can do in like one title or one game engine is going to be maybe slightly different than the other, but it's still generally speaking roughly the same, right? You're most likely going to be doing things on a grid at some point or another. So you can use modular kits and have those animations line up and not have like gaps when someone vaults over something or something like that, right? Or float. You know how many games used to do that where you'd like vault something, then it would just your character would kind of float like up to it and down it and stuff. Crazy stuff like that. All right, so I just wanted to model something real simple so we can put it out to the desktop. We'll just call it a test FBX file. Do edge. We're gonna jump into Unreal Engine, man. That's what we're gonna do. Let's just bring this. I already had a test thing in here. That's not the same one though. Let's just go ahead and import. We'll see what happens here with the import. I've been having tons of fun with the new versions of Unreal because the importer changes. It likes to recompute normals, turn that off, and you would probably want to combine meshes together more than likely. Not always the case. And then there might be some other settings like generate nanite or something you might want to turn on or off. And I don't know if it's going to do nanite. Let's see. Because last time I did this, I couldn't find the option for it. This is the 5.7 preview, or slightly different. Build nanite right there. Turn that off. We don't necessarily need that just yet, so we can import. And you can use the old importer by just turning it off. Going to see if it pops up. Interchange feature flag. No, just type interchange then. Interchange FBX import right here. You would just type 0, space 0. It'll use the old one. And you could put that in like the startup of Unreal if you wanted, but for now, we'll do this. I wanted to get this little terrain slice in here super fast. Hit the right keys here, that would be great. There you go. Holding control or something. I don't know. Something like that. Now, for snapping every 50s, usually you do 100, so you can control N to get back to the grid. Boom, there you go. You got a piece in here now. So let's say you did do some of that old school technique and you were just like trying to figure out what you wanted to do here. And right now we're underneath it because our player start is down here. Actually, just delete that for now. Later on, you can add it back, sure. But when you hit play after doing that, you'll kind of run around wherever you are, basically. So this doesn't have a good collision box, apparently. We take a look at it. It automatically generates collision usually, and not always does it, but where are we going here? I want to view the collision. They changed everything on me. Simple collision. That's the collision box, right? All right. So you see where we're going? Like that's not obviously what we want. You need to take time to make proper collision box if you're creating static mesh. Just because this is a concept piece, you don't do that. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like it's a block out testing piece. So in the collision settings, did I go too far? Did I go not far enough? Not far enough, maybe. All right. No, not presets. There you go. That's what we're looking for. It should look more like this, usually collision, then okay. We're going to use complex as simple. This is not very performant, but you know what? When you just got to get things going, that's what you do, right? So let's see if it works with the green one still there. I'm just curious. It does. There you go. You might want to remove that at some point as well, depending on your project, right? So let's say like remove collision. Now that wouldn't be there anymore. It'd just be the complex one, right? So you save your asset, boom, there you go. But just getting it prepped to get in here and just so we have something to run around on. This is why blockout in Blender is still very possible. You can do like a little test scene, a little test build, get your ideas kind of together and going before you start building out in Unreal Engine necessarily. Now, that's not to say you can't start in Unreal Engine. Plenty of people do this. They start with like the landscape, they use a terrain generator, and then they go and they start using the modeling tools here in Unreal Engine, which if you want to use these, that's fine. It's probably a good reason to learn them. well, there is a good reason to learn them, is because it just allows you to do blockouts very easily with these modeling tools in here. Plus, you can even turn some of these into like finished assets if you really wanted to. It's really not that bad either, but for now, we're not going to focus on that. We're just going to be in here playing with this idea of this mesh. And so when I look at a mesh like this is, to me, it's a fundamental to be able to do things like this to some degree. Because when you look at the way architecture is designed and built, they work with very basic shapes first before they worry about any of the detailing, before any of the other stuff. And that's important to level design, in my opinion, right? Whether you're in Unreal or Blender playing around with these kinds of ideas, you're starting to solve problems you have for level design right off the bat, because now you got, you know, how far this like little terrace thing goes, right? Like how much it drops each time. Is this on the grid, and do you need it on the grid? That's the question. If you do, you got a grid snapping system. It works the same in Unreal Engine. I mean, you could just use it. Why even bother, you know, fighting about that or arguing about it? Now you have a better idea or understanding of what you're trying to create. Great. So all you do is just take it and re-export it, re-import it, test it out, right? It's really not that hard. And it just gives you a chance to play around not only with the static mesh, but Blender's lighting system. You can kind of mimic what happens in game engines with Eevee, but or cycles. But Control L, hold it down. You can change the light source a little bit. That's just like the sunlight, right? This is all you need to get really started. And I would highly recommend making if you're going to work on environment pieces, try to do them at like high noon or somewhere around there at first. Because if it looks ugly here, well, the lighting does look ugly. It's very unflattering. It's not that good. But if you can make your environments start to look good at high noon, you're doing really good, because the golden hours and things like that, it'll make everything else just usually pop a lot more. But you might want to just hit Control L and test it every now and then, see what's going on. Make it look better, right? So cool. So if I was like, hey, I'm going to build this hill in my game some point and put a house on it, I might need like cliff rocks or mud slopes and things like that. And if we're using a nanite system, of course, we're going to need to, well, make little tile sets of that stuff, possibly. I know they've introduced displacement into the terrain and everything else, but those are some of the things you might run into, right? You can see here, this is actually caused by no backfacing, I believe, on this particular piece. So there are some limitations. When you don't have backfacing, you can't just leave it bare, like open to the sun, I guess, if you would. A lot of games or projects in the past, you'd just create blocking mesh a lot of times to fix that, but you could make it like double side render as well, and it'd probably fix it as well, if that's the case of what's going on there anyways. But the whole idea here for this video was just to prove a point that, when you see somebody that's trying to like speak for like there's some kind of standard practice in game art and development, it's like, no, there's studios do things very uniquely across everything. There's kind of like your common, like most common techniques, which are kind of standard. Like you have the ability to use bones and, you can animate and rig and you know what I'm saying? Like common things. So it's kind of interesting when, I see very opinionated people on certain subjects and they're like, oh, you don't have to learn anything about using quads or polygons, or you should do things in plasticity, or no, it's all very opinionated. It might work in certain aspects, but it doesn't work on everything. So, I had one guy ask me like why I don't use plasticity. And it's not that I can't or wouldn't use it. It's just that I don't find it as flexible as Blender, if that's the easiest way to put it. And the same is kind of true with Substance 3D Modeler. Like it's a great, fun little software to use, but it's not very flexible in the sense that like you can make a lot of different models and all kinds of fun stuff. But the moment you start having to line things up on a grid, or maybe you got to do testing of some poses of things like characters that go inside of a vehicle or something, that kind of falls apart at some point, right? Not that you couldn't do it. It's still very good for initial like concept art, but it's not one size fits all, perhaps, right? And so, tools exist for a reason so that you can get things done, make things happen. And the way that, everybody used to just make environments, like polymodeling was the tool of choice, Of course, you could have always made a height map or displacement map or taken some real world topography and made terrain off of that or something. But you did do things like this in polys, and it wasn't necessarily like one size fits all. So photogrammetry, by the way, has been around for a very long time as well. I haven't really talked a whole lot about photogrammetry on the channel. Oh, we got a big hole in the bottom. Whoops, I didn't realize that. But yeah, photogrammetry has been around since, geez, who knows? It's been around for a minute. And that's kind of a big part of assets and workflow today, which I don't really touch on a whole lot. That's why you got Quixel mega scans, and you can do reality capture, and you can do that with your phone. Make any kind of photogrammetry you want there off anything you've seen. I'm going to try to remesh this a little bit lower poly to get started here, because I just want to work this thing out. But if we had to create like mud slopes and stuff, like look at what we're going to do. We're like drawing right now. This is 3D drawing if you want to look at it like that. Let's turn off front faces only, so we don't pull things in the bottom like that. Right? Hopefully the back faces anyways. And so it's kind of weird when I see like all these individuals come out of the woodwork, and they're like, there's like, you have certain groups of like fanboys in different corners of different software and workflows and techniques. And I don't understand that mindset. I don't understand why people do that at all, because there's like a time and a place and a purpose. And there might be reasons people do things, but it doesn't mean it applies to everybody. It's like, I kind of wanted to say, and I think I even said in another video, like people can become really smart in one thing, but kind of like dumb in everything else. And that's kind of a problem, right? Like it really is kind of a problem where everybody's an absolute expert in everything, and they just all know everything because they've searched on Google or something like that. And so when you start getting into like actual environment art, when you actually know what you're doing with it, it's not just like one tool or the other and one way of working. Like there's tons of things you can do. Um, a lot of guys, like, they do environment art in freaking ZBrush and hardly ever touch modeling software otherwise. And it's quite incredible actually that we're even at a point where we can do that kind of thing. But it may not be the most optimized or performant or whatever. There might be other reasons you can't do that. So, there's definitely a little bit of back and forth in workflows and techniques. And what I'm trying to prove here, at least, is like I can take a simple idea of what I was creating and create an asset for it if I need to. Like we're doing a rock wall at this point, or like some kind of mud slope or something. There's supposed to be a mud slope. I'm going off target here. You can do that. And these next gen engines, I mean, they really, or at least Unreal Engine with Nanite, man, it really lets you use this kind of stuff no problem if you wanted to. It'd be nicer if it was more generic, maybe. So that way I could reuse it as much as I possibly could, not just in like one section of the environment, perhaps. And if that's the case, we're probably using the wrong shape here, because the shape's kind of important. So let's use like the grab tool. And let's set it to project. Use it larger. Let's reshape it a little real quick, okay? Might be a little bit warped looking now. We might have to touch it back up, but maybe we want to position this thing a little bit more correctly, right? And so that's more useful. So we make kind of like this convex or this big bend like this, so we can wrap it around terrain if it starts to rotate on us. Stuff like that, right? This is a possibility now for you, because we're using these tools, right? Your sculpting tools. Am I polymodeling? No, I think of sculpting tools as polymodeling, but you're not pushing and pulling polygons traditionally, at least, right? Using a brush. But still, you're still pushing and pulling at the end of the day. And if we use photographs as reference, I'm sure we'd come up with much nicer looking stuff than this. But yeah, we can go through and chisel off some hard edges, maybe leave some of them there. Who knows? It'd be even nicer if we made like the bottom useful, so that we can like flip it over and use it as well. But sometimes you can't really get away with that. Sometimes you can. It depends on your shader setups. And if your shaders are, like Z up shaders, it's not really a big deal. So you can make it kind of more like a chiseled up cube, if you would, with a bend in it. All right. Anyways, let's just do some draw sharps to give it some more unique interests. It's really to sculpt something like this. It takes a while, and this is where photogrammetry I think really comes into play because you can do photogrammetry and then make alphas out of it, right? And so if you go take some photos of rocks and scan them, you can throw them through reality capture. You can turn it into an alpha in Blender. And by the way, GrabDoc got updated. It's on Git right now, but it works. Okay, so it's working again. Awesome. That's one of the big downsides of Blender, right? Like if an add-on goes dead, it hurts. And I've been waiting for that one to get updated. So, but yeah, see, we can go through here. We can chisel it up, make it more interesting, make it more rocky, make it more mud-like. Who knows? They keep going to rocks, and we're supposed to be doing mud. I don't think mud looks as interesting. Make them into like little shapes, little islands. You chisel them up, use the trim tools, all that fun stuff I've shown in previous videos. And go to town, guys. Like literally just go to town. Have fun with it. It's not meant to be rocket science. There's no point in arguing over all these ideas of like there's a better workflow than what used to be done. It doesn't make much sense at the end of the day. There's a lot of those techniques, well, they exist today. Like ZBrush came out in 2000, I think. It was like introduced 99. I didn't start using ZBrush until like 2006-ish or 7-ish. And Mudbox came around and then it stayed, but nobody really uses it, I guess. So never gets updates. You could look at the changelog for Mudbox for like the last 5-6 years. It's just like, oh, updated for documentation or updated, just changing the name basically. The changelog. And so that's fun. Trying to just create more interest here. Need to focus on my shapes, I think, more than anything else. But kind of talking, I'm getting distracted, guys. Sometimes, believe it or not, I've seen a number of artists and designers, and they'll be creating something, trying to do YouTube videos or live demos of what they do. And they struggle with it too. I struggle with it all the time, talking and doing. So I know that's a common thing. And, when you put pressure on yourself to like perform, if you would, right? Sometimes that'll make you a worse artist, especially. So if you're trying to do it in front of like live audiences or in a YouTube video or on Twitch or whatever, sometimes better not to do it at all. Just stick with what works for you anyways. I'm going to fill this in a bit. It's looking bad to me. Oh, we can get talking about that. You guys want to talk about the way things used to be in the modding scene back when I got started? Oh, geez. Some of the most active modders were Counter-Strike modders of all people. And then, of course, there was others elsewhere. But a lot of the tutorials at the time that I learned from, I would pick up books at like Barnes and Noble and read books on how to use Macs. But the online tutorials are usually like HTML web pages, and a lot of them were from Counter-Strike guys that modified video games, and sometimes game developers themselves would have cool information here or there that you could check out. And how to modify the video games. It helped the modding communities or the modding groups do that stuff. So, but it wasn't always the case. And a lot of times you were working off information from other modders and things like that. And when you would get a group together to work on a mod, and I've been a part of a couple different groups or loosely associated with some at least. So you would find that in the groups themselves, a lot of times guys were like pretty brutal to each other, and they would actually just, they would talk trash all day to each other about models and all kinds of other fun stuff. Like your artwork's looking like garbage and trash, and just like you're doing it wrong and you need to stop acting like you're good at what you do and all this other crazy stuff. It was ridiculous. So you could say it was toxic to the highest degree. And at the end of the day, we'd play games with each other and still go into the same lobbies and get on TeamSpeak and just really screw around. And then later on, we would start, working on the mods and stuff again. So it was just always kind of back and forth. And game developers do this kind of stuff today, but it's not as toxic as it was back then. If you would want to say it like that, everybody's much more like, oh, you're doing, like sugarcoating everything to some degree. Trying to be careful about how they constructively criticize someone. And that's fine. I mean, I don't think there's nothing terribly wrong with that, but I feel like the the kind of the brashness, if you would, of everybody talking crap to each other like that. We'll just decimate it here. Let's do that. Was part of the growing experience. Like it really forced you to become, and like there was like a competitive nature to it. It really forced or made you want to become better at what you did and not just, we'll do it one more time. Okay. And so not just kind of settle as being second rate or second best or mediocre, things like that. So believe it or not, you can unwrap these things by using the shortest path selections. Very easy to do. I'm just telling you guys, I'm going to tell you someone to look into that's on Twitch quite a bit, or you can find him working on either Twitch or there's a YouTube channel, of course, and maybe go check out his Discord, which is Dynasty. All right, go check out Dynasty, man. He is constantly doing just cool little fun things and ZBrush and whatnot. There's a lot of great artists that actually make free content. The Dynasty does have some of the better ones out there. I got sometimes I make recommendations on people to watch or follow. That's one I would actually recommend a lot of you to pay attention to if you like game art. But you could do this all day. Surprisingly, I didn't pick this up from Dynasty at all, even though I've seen him do it before. The picked up from Decagon of all people, one of their tutorials. I would have never thought this was acceptable to do because I didn't work with assets like this before at a point. So I would have never done this. And is it technically correct? Not really, I guess. It's not like proper, quote unquote proper, but it's game art is evolving in ways that it just never was before. And that's kind of weird, right? Like you can do this kind of stuff now. It's like, yeah, why not? You can put seams in here. And why? Like what? Because it doesn't matter if it's using world space blending or something, or material blends and using masks. Who cares? As long as it doesn't look very apparently wrong in the end result, then it's fine. And it's kind of fast too once you get used to doing it, right? But you're gonna hear somebody out there that says, you need proper quad topo on everything, and that's not true. I say that all the time. There are times you're gonna need quads, so you need to learn to do it, but it's not all the time you're gonna need them. You can unwrap this too in this manner. You see if sometimes the shortest path gets a weird selection and you have to go back and chisel it up or something. And a lot of times you want to put seams and crevices. That's usually where they work best, but that's not to say you can't just throw some on a ridge either. Do something like that. Like this is going to be, I think, probably a better kind of ridge to go across here. See, it kind of keeps doing that weird selection there through there. You can't actually cut edges for this too if you wanted to. Like you just be like, I want to edge through there, But you'll have to go through, mark it as a seam, and then you'll have to go back and clean up this area perhaps a little bit at least. And so, something like that might work out better. Who knows? Maybe we don't even need this edge here. See where I'm going with that? So like you can't be afraid of your geometry. You can't be afraid of your modeling techniques and your different topologies that you get. Like clean, perfect quad topology. Well, yeah, sure, it's useful in a lot of cases. You don't have to use it. Like you can use crap like this. So then someone's going to say like that's unoptimized and it's not good. And yeah, it's not optimized per se, but it doesn't mean it's not good. There's going to be certain things that you want to create this way, maybe. Now, I'm not going to go through and unwrap all this because I'm not even worried about the unwrapping, but I think you get the idea now, right? Like you could do this, and before you know it, it would be you press U unwrap, and it should be pretty much good to go. And if it's not, you just unwrap it some more, like add some more stems, so that you don't get stretching and stuff. So you use a checker map to check it. But the idea was just to get it going, so I can export just this one asset. We'll say it's the wall or mud wall or whatever it was supposed to be, and we'll say this is version A. Select it. And if you're doing like Unreal, you can do like static mesh, or you could do like your map name or level name perhaps as well, unless it's a more universal kit. So you kind of get the ideas. mud wall A, selected object, export, go to Blender or go to Unreal, go into grab your Blender FBX, bring it in. This one you do nanite, whatever that option is. Always lose it. Why do I always lose this? Mm, yeah, that static mesh. Got to click the tab probably. Yep. I really don't like that new import one. I get the idea behind it when you're on a bigger team and you're pushing assets from like Houdini or something, perhaps. And you can set up like different import rules, basically, what it is. But we drag this in now, and you can see the origin point. Let me talk about that real quick. The origin point's way over here at the center. And if you don't get the origin point placed kind of right first, at least where you think you need it, it's going to be a problem. And the reason for that is if you were to ever update it and you change the origin point, this like you start set dressing with it or something, then you end up with an issue, right? Because then when you update it and you change the origin point, everything shifts around and moves to a different location. See? It'll do something like that. And if you have walls, they might rotate and all kinds of other fun nonsense. But like, look what we have here, and let's see if we can actually put this to use. And that's the answer is yes, we can. We can just throw it here, maybe. Throw it here. And we can throw it here. Maybe we want to reverse it or something. Maybe you can get away with this where you do like a -1. Oop, on Y in this case. -1. Boom. So you could try reversing it. You try scaling them a little. They're more unique. Turn off snapping for scaling. No. Try adjusting the height levels a little. See where we're going? I'm going to take all of these and just be completely lazy and duplicate them. Put them up here. Maybe rotate them a little. Right? So all these guys talking about like old workflows don't matter with new work. That's nonsense. Like, yeah, we didn't exactly, sculpt the terrain here, but we got something started and going, right? Now we can model a more bespoke house piece and do a little bit of like concept design on that. Throw that in here instead of having it on this, perhaps, right? But let's, for simplicity's sake, just delete that or hide it. Actually, it's probably better to hide it, just so you can use it again if needed. We're not going to use this bottom cube here. Let's go to the terrain landscape system. Just click new and just create. We're not going to set up anything super special here, but we can do this real quick. Now, there's actually kind of a trick with the landscape in Unreal Engine landscape system. You're more than likely going to have one vertex every meter, and you're not really going to be able to adjust that in this version of Unreal anyways. Which can kind of be a problem sometimes because you do really need more detail in some areas, but you might be able to get away with tessellation and displacement. But a lot of times your terrains end up smoother than you want them to anyways, which is kind of weird. But a lot of game engines, they have the ability to change that resolution in Unreal. Just, I guess they removed it. I guess it used to be in here. I thought it was always in here, but then they removed it. Doesn't make any sense. But anyways, we can do 1 meter vertices, which is fine. Now, terrain systems have like their own special lotting system, right? Like they always lot kind of at their own rates, and they're kind of expensive in some ways. So a lot of people are like, you don't ever use those old modeling techniques for, yeah, you do actually. You might actually model a hill and stick it in here and have it blend with a terrain system because you need more detail out of it. And then you got to create a custom LOD for it. You can't create tile sets of terrain that LOD manually in Blender. It's a pain, but you can do it. And that's where I think a lot of guys just don't really understand environment art at all. Like, like when when I'm sitting here talking about all these old techniques and like when you like, come on, man, like there's a reason why these kinds of things happen. And holding shift will bring it the other way, right? Just shift and clicking. But yeah, there's reasons why stuff like this would happen. And it's something you might have had to deal with at some point working on the environment. But if you don't do a lot of environment art, or you don't work in like different engines or understand different workflows, then you're not going to know. You're not going to know anything about that because, like, if you just work one engine with um, a very like custom setup, if you would, or like its own system, it's not going to be the way everything else works. And there's kind of like a standard between all of them to some degree. So if you're just doing like urban environments, you might not ever touch landscape quite this much, right? Like it's one of those things. So it just depends on you as an artist and everything that goes into it. So it's not like one size fits all. Like what I'm doing here might not work for a lot of projects, right? It's too high poly. They might have to actually model the low poly stuff and use that as the game asset, not necessarily get away with this here. The only reason we can even get away with this is because of nanite, right? It's the only unless we do a really nice low poly pass like a retopo on top of those rocks, which you possibly could. Man, this is where things like quad remesher, by the way, this is like the whole reason I got quad remesher was to actually do rocks, believe it or not, and a little bit of concept design. That's pretty much it. So, like, if I wanted to try and hit like I don't know 300, maybe turn adapt off a little bit, like 300 ish. Not symmetrical, so let's just see what it does. The thing that usually happens with quad remesher doing something like this, though, is a lot of times, like it'll turn out a mesh, but it gets too soft and it becomes like kind of okayish. Like it's not really that great. So what I found you can do sometimes is useful. You make it lower than you probably want it. There's other ways of doing this, like a native blender as well, like without no add-ons. So you shrink wrap it basically with like a subdivision or something on it. You might be able to use that. It calculates here. It's trying to figure things out. Because yeah, like basically now you can do like you could do a multi-res, you do a subdivision, it's up to you. And then you take that and you add a shrink wrap. Make sure they're aligned first, and then you shrink wrap to the other model. So if we look at this one, if we were to increase that subdivision, kind of get it doing that same thing. But it looks a little bit nicer in a way, I think. Isn't too bad, but you can keep it kind of low poly. And then this could be like your new like game model if you wanted it to be. You just apply the subdivision. You do the shrink wrap applied. You really wanted, and you can go back through. And you could keep sculpting on it a bit, maybe use like crease or crease sharp, or try to do things like that. Maybe cut in some edges. That's a possibility, or you could try to use it outright. There's all kinds of different little weird tricks, and like you could just decimate it again a little bit. Who knows? It's really it's kind of crazy stuff like that. I think most guys don't realize you can get away with sometimes. Insane. But yeah, so we got our terrain in here now. That's nice. Maybe we smooth some of it down, make it a little bit better. This all had to go up in the back here, and it's much larger. So let's use a larger brush, I guess, and get that going. Make it harder to, I think, brush fall off. Yeah, it's a little bit stronger. Get up there quicker. You, of course, use the other sculpting brushes or the terrain brushes, but like the level one, which is flatten, I think, right? So you could do like an eyedrop sample of here, full strength, change it, size, change. Oh, no, that was the target. Thought it was the size. Now that I'm looking at it, where is no brush size is down here, right? What's going on here? No, we're good. Got it. Most engines have this kind of a setup for the height there, right? Like you can do that kind of stuff. This is why you have to have some depth to like static mesh rocks because you have to blend these a lot of times or get them close. And then you can use like materials to make them look like they're unified. But yeah, something like this could be happening or occurring for you. Try using like the erosion brushes and all the other fun stuff that, you ever wanted to use here. Are you going to do this? More than likely at some point, yeah. Like you're going to probably do something similar to this. Even if you use a generated terrain, like you need to chisel into it and eat away at it sometimes, right? We're gonna have a little bit of fun with that little section there. Sometimes you do flattens sample like down here. You can flatten it into that a little bit more. Kind of see. So we're kind of getting to the point where I want to be. Some of this isn't quite high enough. Turn that strength down more. Start nudging it in size. Yeah, I just want to kind of nudge it up a little, and so we don't have that big dip behind it. Although sometimes you want the dip, sometimes you don't. You have to look at like real world examples of terrain and start to kind of match that perhaps. But there could be gameplay reasons why you'd want to dip, you know? And then you can use the smooth tool. And so all that sculpting terrain stuff I did in Blender, some guys were like, when are you ever going to sculpt terrain again and use it? Well, you can. You can sculpt in Blender. You can turn it into a height map. You can bring it right into Unreal Engine. Not even a big deal. The terrain generators, of course, will generate like textures or splat maps and things like that. Now, I'm not saying don't use a terrain generator, but do manually author it after to some degree if you can. You don't want to have it just be like spit out, you know? That doesn't make any sense. Okay, so yeah, we'd work this area a little bit better than at this point. So eventually we just end up like this, you know, like, hey, there we go. Oh, our collision's all goofy on this one too, apparently. Or is that the other one that's hidden? I don't think it would be that one, right? It would be, okay, never mind. I was kind of sidetracked there. Um, our piece here, let's actually, yeah. So if you use complex as simple on a nanite mesh, it kind of sucks. So let's turn on a simple one real quick. You see, like we got to redo it anyways. That's from the old one. It should have updated the collision, but I guess it didn't. All right. Let's do auto convex collision. We can just do an auto, just apply with default settings. We get something like this. So you can see like the collisions like hovering, you'd hover over the surface basically, right? So you can turn up the hull counts or the max hull verts and things like that and see if you can get a better result out of it. Usually it's not going to work out very well. So you'd want to create more of like a custom collision for it perhaps. And so I hardly ever use, well, I will use auto sometimes, but I don't use it as much as other people perhaps. So a lot of developers, you'd be surprised how many of them just use complex as simple. And you'll see here when we do that, it does this number. This is not maybe the most optimized for performance, but it should work fairly well, but we could still end up floating in some areas. So it's kind of bizarre. So like a smaller tile would probably be a little bit better. Plus, what are we looking at here for its file size? Oh, it's not that bad. 50,000. Okay. Usually like below 100,000 is a good area to be. It's for the file size. You see it's like less than a megabyte right now. Oh, okay, it is rendering the other mesh. I was wondering, I was like, there's usually a spot to disable it. Over here is an editor. No, I don't know. I'm gonna turn it. I'm just gonna delete it for now. There's a little option for it, but I don't want to get lost trying to look for it. Usually those things you can just toggle on and off in editor or in game. Right. But you can see with like a mesh like this, we could still have collision issues here with a mesh like this, right? Like it happens. We can very easily have areas we get stuck. We can't move the way we want the player to move, things like that. So those old school modeling techniques where I was making like little gates or the fences for collisions, you could do that here. Like maybe the player's not meant to climb up these, perhaps, right? Put a collision wall here so they can't go climbing up it. You can still do that. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Happens all the time in game art. Nothing special about it. And I wanted to use world space textures. I don't even have to unwrap this necessarily, right? It's not a guarantee that I'd have to anyways. So there you have it, right? You can take those very basic ideas and then be like, oh, I see what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to create these like steps going up, okay, at these intervals. And now how can I make an asset to fit that? That's the idea of blocking out in general. You're not playing guessing games all day about the layout of a level. You can design the whole floor plan for the most part, some very basic ideas of the mesh. You can still utilize it in your workflow. It's not that you have to go straight into engine and use a terrain generator and do all this other stuff. That's nonsense. I don't know who started making that like the standard in the in everything, but it's not what it should have been. But beyond all that, like we can see like maybe these are too high still, and we don't want to resculpt everything. Maybe we just sink them down a little bit without snapping. Is the snapping here super important for anything? I don't think so. I don't think it matters that much on this particular piece. So I would do that. And you might want to create some little breaks where the train does get through there. So you can like paint in some mud or something. Just get like some nice variations here going. Little things like that. And midday, it's already looking kind of cool. It's not too bad, right? And so what do we need else to make this a better environment? Maybe some like little, maybe not like cliff or mud wall rocks or something, but like just a regular little rock set, like a little gravel set that we can throw around everywhere. Maybe we want to do that. So let's maybe do that real quick. How could we start something like that up? I mean, there's so many ways to start something like that up. Where do we start, right? Let's do cursor S back to world origin. And then when we create the plane, it'll come over here. Let's take this plane, right click, subdivide, and shift R a few times so we get something like this. I'm really lazy when it comes to creating things sometimes, guys. So if I wanted to take a plane and subdivide it, go right into sculpt mode. And maybe I just use like the blob tool or something, right? And I just like, yeah, I just want some rocks. I might want a rock here, 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 whatever, right? And we just want a bunch of little rocks. And we can make them look cooler if we want with like clay strips and make them more like this, a little bit. Or we can use photo scan data and assets from a kit bash, like, or like, I don't know, some website or something, right? We do all that if we want, but we want our rocks more squared. And then, so we can make dozens of these different sizes, different little setups or whatever, right? Tons of things. Okay. Like I was saying, I was like super lazy about this kind of stuff. Here, check this out. Ready? Let's just mirror it, right? Use a mirror modifier. Could have symmetrized it as well, but the mirror modifier, we can do Z bisect. See how it starts eating away in there? Let's create it empty. Let's use that as our mirror object. Let's just, boom, there we go. There we go, guys. There's some rocks. We might use those. If they're connected, we could break them apart for sure. Use like a trim tool in sculpt mode, maybe. We'll do like lasso trim. And we want to turn face sets off so we don't see face sets. But you can leave it on if you want, I guess. Maybe I just want to split some of these apart so they're not all connected. Trim them up a little, right? You could do that too. Yeah. And then let's say we want to work on all of these by themselves. Before we do that, let's just remesh them real quick. They all have their like a nice no, bar. Maybe we remesh them like that. We could turn fixed poles on, perhaps. Who knows? Kind of cool. And then now we can just say like go into edit mode, A, P, separate by loose parts. Now we got all individual rocks. We can Alt Q around to them. So we can work on all of them individually. Like stuff like this, I think is so important to understand. You're trying to get into environment art and you're trying to make things like there's different workflows for different things. There's different ways to start. Like you could have modeled a bunch of shapes like this or whatever. You could trim them out. There's all kinds of different ways of working, guys. Someone tells me environment art is all put together using certain types of modeling tools. I'd say you're crazy, because it's not true. Tons of tools you can use. Like if you're doing cloth, you might use different software. You might not even use Blender, right? I was going to do trim tool, I guess. So we can just get in here, turn the wireframes off a second so we don't pay attention to that necessarily. Just want to trim little couple stones together. I'm not saying these are going to look good by the end of this. And data can be useful, but you'd be surprised how much you can still do manually relatively fast. You need special software and stuff for it. This Blender kind of forces you to do some older techniques anyways because of the way it's designed, which is rather interesting, right? Like you kind of are forced to deal with it instead of that you want to. You'll see guys do this in ZBrush too when they use like they'll separate something with a mask. They'll go back and they'll try to trim it up like this. Let's just use a regular scraper. I think that trim tool is not working out for me. You smooth them a little and try scraping again. Hoping to use trim, but it didn't. Go forward slash to isolate. The option and preferences for forward slash and key maps, right? So go preferences, key map, forward slash, or search by key binding forward slash. Look for local view and object mode, the forward slash key. And you can turn off this nasty like zoom in and out feature. They need to turn that off by default, I think. Blender devs consider that. I don't know anybody that really likes it, but maybe it's just me. See how they start to look like rocks really fast, like no reason. Because a lot of times rocks have like hard edges and a mix of soft and hard edges. And they're very subtle in how they look. And that's why the trim tool ends up working out really well usually. Scrapers can work too. So you already guessed it. This is going to be a nanite mesh, right? I'm going to join them all back together here in a second. And we'll try to use them as is, although I don't think this like setup is super flattering right now. I might rearrange them real quick. Then we'll try. Mm. When you do an arrangement like this, you're creating a cluster of shapes, right? Like that's what's happening. You're creating a cluster. Could leave that one a little bit sharp. It's kind of not too bad looking. Once again, look at references if you aren't sure. But you could do a little cluster, like you're doing basic like layout, art fundamentals or design fundamentals, graphic designs, and you do like large, medium, and small, or like rules of thirds or something else. It works. Like it does work. It all works out. Looks better because. So we'll play around with that idea real quick right after I scrape all these edges off. Longer than I thought it was going to, but I keep them simple for now. Maybe you could leave some of them a little sharper, I'm sure, but that maybe. Yeah. You just don't want any that are like floating, which is kind of hard to avoid if they're not tall enough, and you want to intersect them with like terrain that rotates or like has slopes. So that could be a problem for you, perhaps. Last one, the key view selected. You got to be careful with that idea. You could scatter. I'm using scatter tools. There's Unreal used to have one that was in the extension section, but I don't know what happened to it. You could use the vegetation setup supposedly, but I've always found that I had issues with that when I try it. So I don't know what's going on. I guess you could use PCG today, and there might be a way to set up a brush for it. That's what someone recommended in a forum. I was just reading about it, but I haven't set that up yet, so I don't know. I'll have to get into that one. Maybe give an update on it later. But I'm pretty sure you could. Definitely more procedural ways of laying out terrain than doing it manually, right? Some rocks for you. So let's just let's do some that are, we'll take all of them real quick. Set origin to geometry. So now we got center points at least. Let's make some bigger. We'll make a few that are smaller. Okay. Now the only problem with this kind of a setup, I want to point this out, is because nanite doesn't like things that intersect, or it gets like a weird Z fighting issue and overdraw problems or whatever. So if you do have anything touching, you would want to combine them together. This is where things kind of go crazy. You can do UV maps on all of these and have them textured, and then you can actually just bring them in here. And the way you do it in Blender is a little bit rough, because you could just combine them together and remesh them, but then you could project the UVs from the old models to the new one. But it doesn't always work out great, and a lot of times you're better off unwrapping them. But it's possible. So I just wanted to point that out. There's some really interesting things you can do, but you won't know about them necessarily. Also, like, I'm just gonna stretch these a bit. I think it would look nicer if we did, and because of that, we get an error now, so we can, Control A, apply scale to all of them. You can sculpt on, one at a time, sorry, you can't do all of them at the same time. Even though we had them all selected, you'll see only one is gonna work. You can still Alt Q, so it doesn't just wanted this to be a little bit more natural looking here, quite as, crazy as it was. You want, like, very generic kind of rock layout, right? So you got, like, one big one, you got a smaller one, maybe a couple smaller ones, but you wanna maybe a little bit space more because 'cause we're gonna probably intersect a lot of these in Unreal. And you might wanna put, like, some smaller ones towards the outsides, rotate them, scale them a little, create some variation, basically. You're just trying to create a nice, arrangement here, doing some things like this, and making them really just meant to be used in small groups or clusters together with itself. So in Unreal, we're gonna be doing, like, this number where it's like this, and we might scale these again and then do this, right? So you gotta keep it kinda spacey, but not too spacey, and then you gotta make it just work, basically. Okay? Join them if you need to, or you can make a whole terrain slice with a bunch of stuff like this on it, right? Possibility. Smaller. Kinda losing my medium shapes, though. Eh, we'll be alright. You can go pretty small with these. Doesn't really make the outer ones a little smaller. We'll go with that for now. I don't think it's the best it can be, but we're gonna join it to the middle, export it. We'll say rocks. Um, Decimate it actually. Let's do that again. We'll do 0.5s, apply it. You can definitely decimate more than this, so there's nothing wrong with that. As long as it keeps the main shape going, and no shading errors, shade it smooth. All right, export. Say rocks. Could have did the proper naming, but I'm flying through this too quick. Import rocks now. Static mesh. It should still be the same settings. So yeah, we'll build nanite. Awesome. And this is what's fun because a lot of games, the way they work is they do like cliff rock walls, like large, medium, small. Then they do like these rocks like this. They'll do large, medium, small. They might have boulders, large, medium, small. That's kind of the way they go a lot of times. So like when we bring these in, we can see they're really small. That'd take us forever to place all those out like that, especially on the slopes, right? So a bigger patch could be useful, or using a scattering system, kind of scattering tool, like I was saying earlier. But you'd have to build that thing out, and really needed though, like by default in the engine. I'm pretty sure there is like a built-in way of doing it, but it's just not. I don't have it right now, or I haven't learned about it anyways. They keep changing things in this engine. I'm not always over here in this engine. A lot of times I was in Unity, or I was in CryEngine or whatever the case. It's just um, Unreal's like kind of picking up development pace, if you would, I guess. Constantly updating things or changing them around, and it's nice. Don't get me wrong. I like that. I like seeing things updated and newer, kind of reintroduce like or recreate or make new workflows and things like that. I don't mind that. It's not that I'm stuck on like everything. Let's turn that snapping or rotation off. I like seeing updates get. I don't think there's nothing wrong with that. See, like you just try to arrange them naturally. You know what kind of gets you into this idea the most, I think, is when you work with vegetation. So if you're starting to do like foliage and little plants and stuff and these rocks, it all kind of works in a similar fashion where you're trying to do things in kind of like odd numbers and large and medium small, and playing around with colors as well, which we're not going to do in this one, but like a little bit larger, a little bit smaller, a medium one, and then a larger one. But you might want to do like odd numbers. So odd numbers tend to work really well. And you want to try spinning things as well. Instead of spinning like this, let's do a local orientation. Spin it in spot. Okay. You see, this is to me, this is what it's all about right here. Okay. Whether you're using automated systems like paint brushes or like procedural stuff, or you're using like paint brushes to scatter things or physics even, right? Like it's still, this is what it's about right here. It's about creating a good looking set of environmental pieces, building out the area and having fun with it. And like if you got to do structural, architectural elements, you can still block those out, make kit pieces for them, just like we did with this hill, and you work it out, right? Little by little. And before you know it, you have something kind of special. It looks good, hopefully, right? This is using a world space map texture, which I wouldn't say you need it on these ones necessarily, but scaling it like this does not influence the texture size, right? And also maybe scale these ones in the vertical a little bit nicer effect going there. So voila. So you spend your time on it a little bit, of course. You would want to spice these things up a little bit more. And look, just because they're not very special right now doesn't mean we can't go back and keep sculpting on it and bring them back in looking nicer or better, right? Sometimes you can even use something like this, although this one's a little too curved, I think. We'll just alt click, drag around, right? Sometimes you can get away with doing this number where you just poke the front faces out a little bit. Kind of fun. You have them like very intersecting like that. Is that really good for performance? It could be worse, put it that way. Not, I wouldn't say it's great, but it could be worse. See how like it looks unnatural on that right side though? That's probably an issue. You'd want to either tuck that in or do something different, right? See how it looks like that. That's not too bad. If we needed a pathway through here, that's not going to cut it. Too big or it's in the way, one or the other. So now we might be able to cut a pathway in here still. Maybe we bury this section with the grain. So, that's always a possibility. This is why you want to be able to manually author things still a little bit. Maybe just bury it a little. Works out pretty well, I think. Up here. Could have a rock in the way. Hit play, see what we got. Oh, we can get out of the landscape. See what we got now. Oh, we got a little hiccup there. I don't know what that was about. It's okay. I mean, it's just okay. It's not, killer yet, but it can get there. You can see like right here, like that's collisions really nasty. This is why you want to set up your collisions with more appropriate stuff. Oh, we didn't adjust those, did we? The rocks. We do. I'm curious what's going to happen here. Let's just see. Let's do simple. Yeah, that's the collision setup right now. And so the auto convex collision apparently is going to do that number, which is kind of what you want, but not exactly. Yeah, you can't really use that, unfortunately. Maybe, yeah, something like that would be maybe a little bit better, although it's really bizarre too. So we'll see how that works. Otherwise, we just, we create collision boxes in Blender, perhaps, or even in Unreal Engine. You can do it. It's right there, by the way. You didn't know that. Here, I'll show you. Like, we know we're going to do our collisions. We already have collisions, but we don't like these collisions. We can remove collisions. We can add collision boxes or spheres or whatever. So we can do that number. See? So now we can move and rotate and scale them a little, maybe if we needed to. But yeah, there's all kinds of ways of doing stuff. Like you can hit delete it, do a box one. Fortunately, it's usually like boxes and spheres. And so for something a little bit more custom, you'd probably be in Blender for it. As far as I'm aware, there might be another way of doing it that I haven't really experimented with, but Anyways, I think we're good to delete that. Do an auto real quick. Save it. Get back in here, and then we'll play, and we'll call it here after this, right? Now, if we were doing a lighthouse on a hill and we needed water, all we got to do is add the water, the lighthouse up here, little house that goes with it, maybe. Really that simple. Make sure you don't have any discrepancies like rock that's flying or whatever, hovering over the surface. You would have to finish out the backside, obviously. But you guys thought game art was hard. No, it's not really. I think modular kits are the hardest part, believe it or not. The environment pieces are actually the most, they're tons of fun, especially like trees and stuff. I like the rocks the most, but the trees can be fun. There you have it, guys. So you want to make terrain? This is how you want to go? Do it. You can't see the terrain though, the every meter vertex. Kind of rough to work with sometimes. 'Cause it doesn't look good a lot of times. You know, you gotta smooth it down and then use displacement on. Displacement will let you do the really fine gravel, by the way. Or you use parallax occlusion if you're going for older techniques, I guess. But yeah, it's there, guys. Awesome. All right. So I'll see you in the next one. Hope you enjoyed. Take care.